Between the last trace of sunlight and the true abyss, there is a layer of ocean that most people never think about. It is not quite dark, not quite deep, a twilight zone where the pressure is already killing and the food is already scarce, and the light arriving from above is barely enough to see by, but just enough that the animals here have spent millions of years in an arms race around it, around who can see it, around who can hide from it, around who can use it as a weapon without being seen using it at all. The dragonfish won that arms race. What evolution produced in this animal, in response to a world defined by scarcity and darkness and constant predation, is something that marine biologists still pause over when they bring one to the surface. Not because it is large, it is not large, but because the number of separate, extraordinary adaptations compressed into a body that's small, pointed so precisely at a single purpose, feels less like the result of natural selection and more like something that was designed. Its body absorbs light in a way that should not be physically possible for living tissue. Its teeth are built from material that makes them disappear even when they catch a glow. It perceives light that nothing else around it can detect, a private sense, invisible to its prey, that turns the darkness into something it can see through and they cannot. And that is before you get to the jaw. Tonight, we descend into the twilight zone and find out what millions of years of darkness, pressure, and hunger actually builds. Long before any single dragonfish earned a reputation for seeming impossible, there was a much broader lineage spreading through the darkest reaches of the sea, a family whose members had been shaped by the same demanding world, while arriving at many different expressions of the same enduring design. Marine biologists place these animals within the family Stomidae, a remarkable collection containing well over 300 recognized species. Together they inhabit every ocean on Earth, from tropical waters to the icy reaches surrounding Antarctica within the Southern Ocean, occupying a realm that appears disconnected from the familiar rhythms of the world above. Most of these fish spend their lives between the mesopelagic zone and the bathypelagic zone. In simple terms, that means they usually inhabit depths beginning around 200 meters, which is about 656 feet, extending to 1,000 meters, that is nearly 3,281 feet, before many continue downward through waters reaching approximately 4,000 meters, which is about 13,123 feet. Within this immense vertical landscape, daylight fades until it no longer offers guidance. The sun still exists overhead, yet almost none of its presence survives the long passage through the water. What remains is a place where darkness has become an ordinary condition rather than an occasional event. Although the name dragonfish often suggests a single extraordinary animal, it actually refers to a diverse family whose branches have each refined the same basic survival plan in different directions. Among them are the snaggletooths, whose projecting fangs inspired their common name. There are the viperfish, carrying elongated teeth that extend well beyond the closed mouth. Black dragonfish cloak themselves in some of the darkest skin known among living creatures. Loosejaws developed one of the most unusual feeding structures found anywhere beneath the waves. Alongside them live both scaleless dragonfish and scaly dragonfish, each representing another variation shaped by countless generations adapting to nearly identical pressures while following slightly different evolutionary paths. Despite these differences, the resemblance between relatives is unmistakable. Most possess disproportionately large heads attached to remarkably slender bodies, giving them an appearance unlike the streamlined forms common in brighter seas. Their jaws are oversized in relation to the rest of the skull, hinting at feeding strategies that place overwhelming importance on securing every possible meal. Their eyes often appear unexpectedly small, an observation that seems puzzling until the conditions surrounding them become clearer. Covering nearly every surface is skin so dark that it blends naturally into the surrounding water, allowing the outline of the animal to dissolve long before any details become visible. Each of these features exists because this environment offers very little generosity. Near the surface, drifting plankton, schools of fish, and abundant sunlight support a crowded web of life where opportunities for feeding arrive with relative frequency. Far below, those opportunities become widely scattered. Organic material sinks only gradually from above, and much of it is consumed long before reaching these depths. Living prey is present, yet encounters may be separated by long stretches with nothing at all. The amount of available food represents only a small fraction of what supports the bustling ecosystems closer to the waves. Under such conditions, survival favors patience over constant movement, precision over excess, and efficiency over waste. Every unnecessary expenditure of energy carries a cost that cannot easily be recovered. Over immense spans of evolutionary time, those relentless pressures sculpted an entire family into forms that seem almost unbelievable when viewed through the expectations of life nearer the surface. What appears unusual from above is simply the shape that endurance has taken in one of the least forgiving habitats on Earth. Nothing on a dragonfish appears accidental. Its form is less like a collection of body parts and more like a collection of answers, each one shaped by the same demanding equation repeated across countless generations. Every curve, every surface, every proportion carries the imprint of survival. Features that might seem exaggerated or even unnatural in brighter waters become practical here, refined not for beauty or display, but for solving problems that emerge only where nourishment is scarce, and every encounter carries unusual weight. The result is an animal whose body functions as a single coordinated system. No structure exists in complete isolation. A change in one feature strengthens another until the entire fish becomes an expression of careful economy. Instead of investing energy in powerful muscles for prolonged pursuit or broad fins for rapid travel, evolution favored a different path. It assembled a predator that succeeds by revealing as little of itself as possible until the final instant before capture. Some of those solutions seem almost beyond expectation. There is skin so deeply dark that ordinary cameras struggle to distinguish its outline from empty water. There are teeth that seem to disappear even when the mouth opens. There is a jaw whose construction abandons familiar limits in favor of an arrangement that appears almost impossible at first glance. There is also a way of sensing the surrounding world that grants access to information unavailable to nearly every neighboring creature. None of these adaptations appeared independently of the others. Together they form a single strategy, each strengthening the effectiveness of the next. Such precision exists because mistakes carry an extraordinary cost. Near the surface, another opportunity to feed may arrive before long. A missed strike can often be followed by another attempt within the same day. Far below, the intervals between successful hunts may stretch far longer. A prey animal drifting just beyond reach may represent energy that cannot easily be replaced. Every failed ambush consumes precious reserves, and recovering those reserves depends upon another encounter that may not come soon. Survival therefore favors certainty over frequency, rewarding designs that increase the chance of success even by the smallest margin. This pressure altered the direction of evolution in remarkable ways. Many familiar predators rely upon acceleration, endurance, or overwhelming force. Dragonfish rarely depend upon any of those qualities. Their bodies remain slender rather than heavily built. Their movements conserve effort rather than celebrate speed. Instead of outrunning prey across great distances, they allow the surrounding darkness to perform much of the work. Remaining unnoticed becomes more valuable than becoming faster, because an unseen predator spends almost no energy before the decisive moment arrives. Over immense spans of time, natural selection continued refining that principle with remarkable consistency. Anything reflecting unnecessary light became a disadvantage. Anything revealing the outline of the hunter too early reduced the likelihood of feeding. Anything increasing resistance during a strike risked allowing prey to escape. Even structures that appear excessive from a human perspective exist because they solved one specific challenge better than competing designs. Evolution did not pursue perfection in every possible direction. It concentrated on the handful of qualities that mattered most within this isolated world. Seen together, the dragonfish resembles an intricate mechanism assembled from living tissue rather than metal. Each component contributes to a sequence that begins long before prey comes within reach and continues until the meal has been secured. Concealment becomes the foundation upon which every later action depends. The body does not simply carry weapons. The body itself is the weapon, shaped piece by piece by an environment where efficiency outweighs excess, restraint surpasses strength, and remaining unseen becomes the greatest advantage of all. Color loses much of its meaning when almost every trace of light has disappeared, yet the smallest reflection can still carry enormous consequence. Against that faint glow, the surface of a dragonfish has become something extraordinary. Laboratory measurements have shown that the skin of certain dragonfish can absorb more than 99.5% of the light that reaches it. Almost nothing returns to the surrounding water. Instead of reflecting brightness back toward an observer, the skin captures it so completely that the outline of the animal begins to dissolve into the darkness surrounding it. Researchers describe this remarkable quality as ultra-black, a term that sounds dramatic until it is placed beside familiar comparisons. Fresh asphalt reflects more light. A black cotton shirt reflects more light. Even many industrial black paints, long considered among the darkest materials available, return a greater share of the light striking their surface. Before the recent development of highly specialized engineered coatings designed for scientific and technological purposes, few manufactured materials approached the extraordinary darkness achieved naturally by these deep ocean fish. The dragonfish arrived at this solution through evolution alone, refining it across immense stretches of time without laboratories, machinery, or deliberate invention. The difference may appear subtle when expressed as percentages, yet vision depends upon reflected light. Every visible object reveals itself because at least a small portion of incoming light changes direction and travels toward another pair of eyes. When almost none of that light escapes, shape becomes difficult to separate from the surrounding water. Fine details disappear first, followed by edges, until the animal resembles an empty space rather than a living body. It does not become literally invisible, but it approaches that condition with remarkable effectiveness under the dim conditions where it spends its life. This adaptation serves a purpose, extending beyond avoiding hunters drifting above. The dragonfish inhabits a world where many creatures produce their own light. Tiny crustaceans shimmer. Jelly-like animals pulse with brief flashes. Countless drifting organisms create delicate points of illumination that drift through the darkness like scattered stars beneath the sea. If those faint glows were allowed to strike the dragonfish and reflect outward, even briefly, the predator could betray its own position at the very moment concealment matters most. Some dragonfish also carry their own sources of bioluminescence. Light produced near the body creates another challenge, because any reflected glow could outline the animal using its own illumination. Skin capable of absorbing nearly every incoming ray prevents much of that scattered light from escaping. The glow remains concentrated where it serves a purpose instead of spreading across the body like an unwanted signal. Even the faint radiance emitted by nearby prey becomes far less likely to reveal the waiting hunter. This remarkable darkness does not belong exclusively to dragonfish. Scientists examining collections of deep ocean species discovered the same extraordinary property appearing repeatedly among animals that are not closely related. At least 16 different species possess skin capable of achieving this remarkable level of light absorption, and several of those species belong to the dragonfish family. Although each lineage followed its own evolutionary history, they arrived at strikingly similar solutions while living under comparable conditions far beneath the surface. Such repetition carries its own meaning. Evolution rarely preserves an expensive biological feature unless it provides a substantial advantage. Producing skin that captures nearly every available ray requires specialized structures and resources, yet those costs are outweighed by the benefit of remaining concealed within one of the most demanding habitats on Earth. Across separate branches of deep ocean life, the same answer emerged again and again until darkness itself became not merely the setting in which these animals lived, but a material woven into the very surface of their bodies. Science sometimes advances through remarkable discoveries and sometimes through repeated failure that refuses to disappear. The path toward understanding the dragonfish's extraordinary skin began not with a dramatic breakthrough, but with an observation that became more puzzling each time it occurred. A researcher at the Smithsonian Institution found herself returning from deep ocean imaging sessions with photographs that seemed strangely incomplete. The animals were present, their shapes could be confirmed. Yet something essential was always missing. Each attempt followed the same careful process. Different lighting arrangements were tested, exposure settings were adjusted, angles changed. The equipment itself was examined for faults. Every reasonable explanation pointed toward the camera, the illumination, or the conditions beneath the sea. Even so, the results remained stubbornly consistent. Certain deep-sea fish refused to reveal their surface, no matter how carefully they were photographed. Instead of scales, texture, or subtle contours, the images displayed only dark outlines. The fish appeared almost perfectly flat, as though depth had vanished from the photograph altogether. Their bodies resembled empty spaces cut from the surrounding scene, more like holes in the image than living animals occupying the water. Details that should have reflected at least a trace of light simply failed to appear, leaving behind silhouettes with remarkably little information for either the eye or the camera to capture. Such consistency gradually changed the direction of the investigation. Cameras can malfunction, but they rarely fail in precisely the same way, while successfully recording everything surrounding the subject. Lighting can be imperfect, yet it normally reveals at least some variation across an object's surface. Here, however, neighboring animals appeared as expected, while these particular fish continued absorbing almost every attempt to illuminate them. The pattern became too reliable to dismiss as coincidence. Attention slowly shifted away from the instruments and toward the fish themselves. Rather than asking why the photographs were failing, researchers began considering whether the images were actually succeeding. Perhaps the camera was recording the truth with complete accuracy. Perhaps the astonishing darkness visible in every frame was not a limitation imposed by technology, but a faithful record of the animal's own remarkable appearance. That possibility transformed an apparent technical problem into a biological mystery. The dragonfish and several other deep-sea species were not hiding because the equipment lacked sophistication. They were hiding because their own bodies interacted with light in a manner unlike almost anything scientists had previously examined. The camera was performing exactly as designed. It simply could not recover light that never returned from the animal's surface in the first place. Once this realization settled into place, photographs that had once seemed disappointing became valuable evidence. Every featureless silhouette hinted that an unusual physical process was unfolding across the skin itself. The absence of visible detail carried information just as meaningful as any sharply focused image. What looked empty was, in reality, revealing one of the most remarkable adaptations yet documented among deep ocean animals. Researchers now had a different challenge before them. The question was no longer whether the dragonfish possessed exceptionally dark skin. That much had become increasingly difficult to deny. The deeper mystery concerned the mechanism responsible for such extraordinary performance. Somehow, the surface of these fish prevented almost every incoming ray from escaping back into the surrounding water. Hidden within the outer layers of living tissue was an arrangement capable of overwhelming even carefully controlled scientific imaging, inviting a closer examination of the microscopic architecture responsible for turning reflected light into almost complete darkness. Inside, many skin cells are tiny, pigment-filled structures known as melanosomes. A melanosome is a microscopic package containing dark pigment, the same general kind of biological material that gives color to the skin, feathers, fur, or scales of countless living creatures. In most animals, these structures help determine appearance by absorbing part of the incoming light, while allowing some of it to scatter back toward an observer. That familiar arrangement produces shades of brown, gray, or black, yet it still leaves enough reflected light for edges and textures to remain visible. The dragonfish follows a different blueprint. Instead of scattering these pigment-filled structures throughout the skin with small spaces separating them, the outer surface is lined with unusually large melanosomes packed tightly together. They form an almost continuous layer immediately beneath the surface, leaving remarkably few gaps through which light can escape. Rather than behaving as isolated particles, they work collectively, creating a surface whose effectiveness depends upon the precise arrangement of millions of microscopic components acting together. This organization changes the path taken by incoming light in a subtle but powerful way. When a ray reaches ordinary dark skin, part of it is absorbed, while another portion may reflect away or pass deeper into the tissue before emerging again. In the dragonfish, those opportunities become dramatically reduced. Light entering the densely packed layer encounters pigment repeatedly in rapid succession. Every encounter removes more of its energy, making the chance of escape increasingly small. Researchers have described this process using the image of a light trap. The comparison captures the idea with remarkable simplicity. Instead of striking the surface and bouncing outward, light enters a maze of tightly packed pigment where it is redirected from one microscopic structure to another. It does not readily reflect back toward the surrounding water, nor does it travel cleanly through the tissue. It remains confined within the layered arrangement until its energy is gradually absorbed. The surface behaves less like a mirror and more like a carefully constructed chamber designed to prevent light from finding its way back out. The elegance of this solution lies in its economy. The dragonfish did not evolve a completely new pigment unavailable to other animals. It relied upon biological materials already widespread throughout the living world. Evolution instead altered their size, their spacing, and their placement, transforming familiar ingredients into an unfamiliar result. By changing architecture rather than chemistry, the fish achieved a level of darkness that rivals some of the most advanced engineered materials created by human technology. The advantage produced by this microscopic arrangement extends directly into survival. Computer modeling and laboratory measurements suggest that predators searching for these fish may need to approach as much as 6 times closer before detecting them. That reduction is enormous in an environment where vision often depends upon only the faintest traces of available light. Every additional moment spent unnoticed increases the possibility of avoiding danger while preserving valuable energy for feeding. Across the dragonfish's skin, countless melanosomes continue performing this task without pause, each one insignificant on its own, yet extraordinary when joined with millions of others in perfect proximity. The remarkable darkness, revealed by scientific instruments, is therefore not the product of a single extraordinary structure, but of an immense community of microscopic pigment-filled bodies working together so effectively that even carefully controlled beams of light struggle to escape their grasp. Patterns begin to emerge when enough species are placed beside one another. What first appeared to be a remarkable characteristic belonging to only a handful of dragonfish gradually revealed a much broader story, one stretching across distant branches of deep ocean life. As researchers expanded their observations, they found that at least 16 different species possessed skin capable of absorbing an extraordinary amount of incoming light. The surprising part was not simply the number of animals sharing this ability. It was the fact that many of them were only distantly related. If these fish had all descended from a recent common ancestor carrying this remarkable adaptation, the explanation would have been relatively straightforward. Instead, their family histories diverged long ago. Some belonged to entirely different lineages, separated by millions of years of independent evolution. Their body shapes differed, their feeding habits varied, their closest relatives often lacked the same remarkable darkness altogether. Yet despite those differences, each lineage had arrived at nearly the same solution. Biologists describe this process as convergent evolution. Convergent evolution occurs when unrelated organisms, facing similar environmental pressures, independently develop comparable biological features. The resemblance does not arise because one species inherited the trait directly from another. Instead, the same problem produces the same answer again and again, as natural selection steadily favors whichever design offers the greatest advantage under nearly identical conditions. Examples of convergent evolution appear throughout the natural world. Wings evolved separately in birds, bats, and insects. Streamlined bodies emerged independently among sharks, dolphins, and extinct marine reptiles. None borrowed those forms from one another. Similar challenges shaped similar outcomes. The deep ocean has followed that same pattern, guiding unrelated fish toward skin capable of absorbing almost every trace of available light. That repetition carries unusual significance. Evolution explores countless possibilities through variation across immense spans of time. Most experiments disappear because they provide little advantage or create unnecessary cost. Only a small number persist through generation after generation. When separate evolutionary lineages repeatedly converge upon nearly the same design, biologists recognize that they are witnessing more than coincidence. They are seeing strong evidence that the surrounding environment consistently rewards one particular solution above many alternatives. Within the deep ocean, remaining undetected offers advantages to both hunter and hunted. Any surface reflecting unnecessary light becomes increasingly costly where illumination is scarce, and every encounter may determine survival. Under those conditions, darker skin does not merely improve camouflage by a small margin. It shifts the balance enough for natural selection to preserve the feature repeatedly, even among species sharing little recent ancestry. Across vast stretches of evolutionary history, unrelated animals continued discovering the same remarkable strategy because the environment kept presenting the same uncompromising challenge. This makes ultra-black skin appear less like an extraordinary curiosity and more like an inevitable destination. Whenever evolution encountered similar circumstances beneath the sea, it repeatedly traveled toward the same destination using different evolutionary paths. Separate histories converged upon a shared design, each arriving independently at a surface that captured light with remarkable efficiency. The dragonfish therefore represents one chapter within a much larger biological pattern. Its remarkable darkness is exceptional, yet it also belongs to a recurring theme written across distant branches of deep ocean life. The environment itself became the author, shaping unrelated species toward the same answer until the solution appeared again and again across the darkness below. Even so, concealment alone could never complete the dragonfish's remarkable design. Vanishing from another animal's sight solved only one part of survival. The predator still required weapons capable of operating without betraying its presence, and those weapons would prove just as remarkable as the living darkness surrounding them. At first glance, such a feature seems unnecessary. Teeth are tools meant to seize prey after the moment of attack, and they appear too small to betray a hunter concealed within the surrounding darkness. Yet the dragonfish spends much of its existence relying upon patience rather than pursuit. Remaining almost perfectly motionless allows valuable energy to be conserved, while potential prey drifts closer of its own accord. During those long intervals, the mouth often remains partly open, with the fangs already positioned for the instant they are needed. Ordinary teeth would interfere with that strategy. Even in dim conditions, hard surfaces scatter whatever light reaches them. Tiny reflections may be enough to outline a waiting predator before the strike begins. Against skin that absorbs nearly every incoming ray, bright white or slightly reflective teeth would interrupt the illusion, creating narrow lines that announce the presence of the animal before its jaws ever move. The dragonfish avoids that problem in a remarkably elegant way. Its fangs allow light to pass through them instead of reflecting a noticeable portion back toward nearby eyes. Set against the surrounding darkness and framed by skin that already captures almost every available ray, the teeth become astonishingly difficult to distinguish. The open mouth no longer appears, filled with rows of sharp points. Instead, it seems almost empty, as though nothing waits behind the lips at all. This effect changes the appearance of the entire predator. The outline of the head becomes less defined because one of its most recognizable features has nearly vanished. A drifting fish approaching from the front is confronted by far fewer visual clues than would normally accompany a mouth armed with such formidable weapons. The dragonfish has not hidden the danger by making the teeth smaller. It has hidden them by making them nearly disappear. For an ambush hunter, that difference carries immense value. Every additional heartbeat spent unnoticed increases the chance that prey will drift within striking distance. Movement is minimized. Energy remains preserved. The surrounding water continues carrying unsuspecting animals closer until escape becomes far less likely. Success depends upon delaying recognition for as long as possible, and transparent fangs extend that delay by removing one more signal that might reveal the predator's position. The remarkable appearance of these teeth also challenges ordinary expectations about biological materials. Transparency is commonly associated with softness or fragility. Glass can shatter. Clear tissues within living animals are often delicate, flexible, or thin. Teeth, by contrast, must endure repeated impacts while piercing struggling prey. They are expected to be hard, durable, and resistant to fracture. Bringing those qualities together within the same structure appears almost contradictory. That contradiction attracted the attention of scientists studying both biology and materials. The dragonfish seemed to possess teeth that combined two characteristics rarely found side by side. They remained remarkably difficult to see while continuing to function as efficient hunting tools. The question was no longer whether the fangs were transparent. Careful observation confirmed that unusual property beyond doubt. The deeper mystery rested within the material itself, because a tooth that allows light to pass through would ordinarily be expected to sacrifice strength. Yet these remarkable weapons showed little sign of making such a compromise. A closer look eventually revealed that the answer was hidden far beneath the smooth surface of each fang. What appeared to be a simple, transparent tooth was, in reality, a remarkably sophisticated material assembled with extraordinary precision. In 2019, materials scientists at the University of California, San Diego, published research explaining how these unusual teeth could remain both nearly invisible and remarkably effective, uncovering a microscopic arrangement unlike anything previously documented in the teeth of a hunting fish. The discovery showed that transparency was not created by making the teeth thinner or reducing the amount of mineral within them. Instead, the secret rested in the internal architecture itself. Deep inside every fang were crystal structures so incredibly small that they existed on the scale of billionths of a meter. Rather than being arranged randomly, these crystals followed an organization that carefully limited the scattering and reflection of incoming light. As light entered the tooth, it encountered very few opportunities to bounce in different directions. Instead of producing the faint glimmer that normally reveals hard surfaces, the light continued through with remarkably little disturbance. This arrangement solved a problem that ordinary teeth cannot avoid. Human teeth contain countless microscopic channels known as dentin tubules. These tiny passages run throughout much of the tooth, and while they serve important biological functions, they also interrupt the path of light. Every interruption causes small amounts of scattering, making the tooth appear white or slightly opaque rather than transparent. Even polished enamel cannot eliminate that effect completely because the underlying structure continues redirecting light in many different directions. Dragonfish teeth follow a remarkably different design. They possess almost none of these microscopic dentin tubules. Without that dense network of channels interrupting the passage of light, the crystal structure remains far more uniform from one region to the next. Light, therefore, encounters fewer internal boundaries capable of producing reflections. The fang becomes difficult to distinguish against the surrounding water because it offers so little visual contrast, even while retaining the mineral strength expected of a hunting tooth. The elegance of this solution lies not in adding something extraordinary, but in removing a feature that most vertebrate teeth naturally possess. Evolution simplified the internal structure until transparency emerged as a consequence of careful organization rather than exotic chemistry. Every microscopic crystal contributes to a surface that remains remarkably difficult to detect without sacrificing the qualities required for capturing struggling prey. For materials scientists, this discovery extended well beyond marine biology. Transparent substances are valuable across many fields of engineering, yet combining transparency with high mechanical strength remains a persistent challenge. Glass offers excellent clarity, but fractures comparatively easily under certain forms of stress. Many durable materials become cloudy because their internal structures scatter light before it can pass through. The dragonfish demonstrated that nature had already produced an elegant compromise using principles refined through evolution rather than manufacturing. Researchers are now studying this remarkable dental architecture as inspiration for developing transparent ceramics capable of resisting damage while preserving optical clarity. By examining how the dragonfish organizes minerals at an extraordinarily small scale, engineers hope to create new materials for applications where both visibility and durability are essential. The teeth of a deep ocean predator have therefore become more than biological curiosities. They have emerged as natural examples of advanced structural engineering, reminding scientists that some of the most innovative designs on Earth were perfected long before human technology began searching for the same solutions. Strength and transparency rarely exist together in nature. Materials that allow light to pass through are often delicate, while structures built to endure repeated impacts usually become opaque as their internal complexity increases. The dragonfish refuses that familiar pattern. Careful mechanical testing has shown that its nearly invisible fangs are comparable in hardness and sharpness to those of the great white shark, proving that their remarkable clarity comes with almost no sacrifice in performance. This finding surprised researchers because it challenged a long-standing expectation about biological materials. Improving one property often weakens another. A lighter skeleton may become more fragile. Thicker armor may reduce flexibility. A sharper edge may dull more quickly under repeated use. Such compromises appear throughout the living world because evolution constantly balances competing demands. The dragonfish, however, reached an unusually elegant solution. Its teeth remain extraordinarily difficult to detect while preserving the durability required to seize struggling prey. That balance depends upon the same careful organization hidden within the tooth itself. The orderly mineral structure does more than guide light with remarkable efficiency. It also distributes mechanical forces throughout the fang, allowing the slender tooth to withstand the sudden stresses created during a successful strike. Rather than behaving like delicate glass, the material performs as a resilient biological tool, refined through immense spans of evolutionary time. The result is a weapon that excels in two different ways at once. It disappears visually, while remaining fully capable of piercing flesh with remarkable effectiveness. No exchange was required between concealment and function. Evolution achieved both simultaneously, preserving the advantages of transparency without surrendering the qualities expected from an efficient predator. Every fang, therefore, contributes to a design that remains almost impossible to notice until physical contact has already occurred. For a hunter that depends upon ambush instead of pursuit, this combination carries enormous value. The dragonfish spends long periods conserving energy while waiting for opportunity to drift within reach. During that interval, any unnecessary signal increases the possibility that prey will alter course before entering striking distance. Transparent teeth remove one more clue from the surrounding water, allowing the predator to remain concealed until the final instant. Once that instant arrives, the attack itself unfolds with remarkable economy. There is no prolonged chase across open water and little opportunity for repeated attempts. The success of the entire encounter depends upon a brief movement executed with precision after an extended period of restraint. Every feature supporting that moment must perform without hesitation. The fangs therefore serve two purposes at once. They must remain almost impossible to detect beforehand, then become instantly effective when contact finally occurs. In that sense, the dragonfish carries weapons that remain unnoticed in more than one way. Their movement produces little disturbance before the strike, and their appearance contributes almost nothing that might betray the waiting predator. They are discreet in motion and elusive in appearance, allowing the animal to approach the decisive instant with as few warnings as possible. The remarkable darkness of the skin conceals the body, while the transparent teeth erase another familiar outline that prey might otherwise recognize. Yet concealment alone cannot complete the work of an ambush hunter. Remaining hidden has little value without the ability to locate another creature first. The dragonfish solved the challenge of avoiding detection with extraordinary precision, but survival in perpetual darkness also demanded a different kind of innovation, one directed not toward disappearing from another animal's sight, but toward perceiving what almost nothing else in the surrounding ocean could ever see. Concealment alone could never guarantee a successful hunt. Even the most perfectly hidden predator must still locate another living creature within a realm where almost every visible signal has faded away. Certain dragonfish solve that challenge by developing an ability unlike almost anything else in their surroundings. They can perceive a portion of the light spectrum that remains effectively invisible to nearly every neighboring animal sharing the same depths. This is not a figure of speech or a poetic description of unusually sharp eyesight. It is a literal difference in perception. The surrounding water contains a form of light that passes unnoticed through the visual world of most deep-sea creatures, yet certain dragonfish possess the biological equipment needed to detect it. They inhabit the same darkness as everything around them, but they do not experience that darkness in exactly the same way. Hidden within what appears to be complete blackness exists an additional layer of visual information available to only a select few. For generations, marine biologists regarded the deep ocean as a place where visual systems had converged upon similar limits. The scarcity of sunlight appeared to leave little room for specialized color vision. Most animals living at these depths evolved eyes suited to detecting the faintest glimmers available, sacrificing broad color perception in favor of extreme sensitivity. That expectation made the dragonfish all the more remarkable, because it demonstrated that evolution had preserved not merely the ability to detect dim light, but access to an entirely different channel of illumination. To imagine this difference, consider two observers standing within the same landscape. One sees only the familiar features surrounding them. The other notices an additional layer woven invisibly through that same scene, revealing details the first observer never realizes are present. Neither occupies a different place, yet each experiences a different version of reality. The dragonfish inhabits such a world beneath the sea, surrounded by visual information that many neighboring creatures cannot perceive, despite drifting only a short distance away. This unusual ability transformed the relationship between hunter and prey. Many deep ocean animals depend upon remaining unseen, trusting that darkness conceals their movements from nearby predators. Their survival strategies evolved around the limits shared by almost every eye surrounding them. If nearly every creature perceives the world through the same narrow window of available light, remaining outside that window provides reliable protection. The dragonfish quietly stepped beyond those common limits, gaining access to signals that escaped almost every other observer. Remarkably, this advantage required no increase in physical speed or strength. It depended instead upon information. Detecting what others cannot detect changes every decision made during a hunt. Movements become more deliberate because the predator possesses knowledge unavailable to the prey. The surrounding environment appears richer, not because more light exists, but because the dragonfish alone can interpret part of it. The difference resembles opening a hidden page within an already familiar book, discovering that the story contains an entire layer previously concealed from nearly every reader. Evolution rarely grants such exclusive advantages without demanding extraordinary refinement. Building an eye capable of responding to this additional form of illumination required precise biological changes, each preserved because it improved survival within one of the most demanding habitats on Earth. Over immense spans of time, those changes accumulated until certain dragonfish inherited a visual system unlike almost anything surrounding them. The result is a predator that does more than vanish from another creature's sight. It also observes a realm that remains inaccessible to nearly every other animal nearby, creating an advantage so subtle that the surrounding ocean continues behaving as though that hidden channel of light does not exist at all. To understand why this unusual vision matters so profoundly, it helps to consider the rules followed by almost every other pair of eyes living in the deep ocean. At these depths, roughly 95% of known animals capable of seeing rely almost entirely on blue light. Their visual systems have been refined over immense spans of evolutionary time to detect that narrow portion of the spectrum because it is the form of light that travels farthest through seawater before fading away. Water does not treat every color equally. As sunlight descends through the ocean, longer wavelengths disappear first. Reds fade away, surprisingly close to the surface, followed by oranges and yellows, while blue continues traveling deeper than any visible alternative. By the time the ocean reaches the realm inhabited by dragonfish, almost every remaining trace of natural illumination exists within shades of blue. Evolution responded to that reality with remarkable consistency. Eyes became increasingly specialized for detecting the color most likely to remain available, and bioluminescent organisms began producing blue light because it could travel the greatest distance through the surrounding water. Over countless generations, predator and prey adapted together within that shared visual world. Hunters searched for blue signals because those were the signals they could perceive most effectively. Smaller animals learned to avoid producing unnecessary reflections that might stand out against the darkness. Every adjustment reinforced the same underlying pattern until blue became the common language of vision throughout much of the deep sea. That common language also created an unexpected opportunity. Since red wavelengths vanish rapidly within the upper layers of the ocean, an object reflecting red light becomes remarkably difficult to distinguish once it has descended into the deeper water. There is almost no red illumination left to reflect in the first place. Without a source of red light reaching the body, red surfaces no longer appear vividly colored. Instead, they seem almost indistinguishable from black to eyes, capable of detecting only blue wavelengths. Many small, deep ocean animals gradually took advantage of that physical reality. Rather than avoiding red pigmentation, they evolved to embrace it. A bright red body near the surface would attract immediate attention beneath daylight, yet far below it becomes one of the most effective forms of camouflage available. The surrounding environment removes the very light needed to reveal that color. To neighboring animals relying upon blue-sensitive vision, a crimson crustacean or fish effectively disappears into the darkness despite carrying pigments that would appear brilliantly colored under the sunday. This strategy proved remarkably successful because it depended upon a dependable property of light itself, rather than the behavior of any particular predator. As long as surrounding animals remained unable to perceive red wavelengths, the disguise continued working. It required no movement, no elaborate display, and no specialized structure beyond the pigment already covering the body. The ocean itself completed the camouflage by filtering away the information required to expose it. For immense spans of evolutionary history, this made red one of the safest colors an animal could possess below the reach of sunlight. It offered concealment through absence rather than imitation. Instead of blending into surrounding objects, it simply ceased contributing meaningful visual information to nearly every observer nearby. A predator scanning the darkness with ordinary deep-sea vision would pass over such prey without recognizing the remarkable disguise unfolding before its own eyes. Within this hidden world, red became something far more valuable than decoration. It became protection, woven into the biology of countless creatures because the physics of light appeared to guarantee its reliability beneath the sea. The certainty that red offered protection endured for immense spans of evolutionary time, until one branch of the dragonfish family quietly abandoned the rules, followed by almost everything around it. Certain dragonfish, including the remarkable stoplight loosejaw, evolved the ability not only to perceive red light, but also to produce it themselves. In a world where almost every neighboring creature remained effectively blind to those wavelengths, this became one of the most extraordinary hunting adaptations ever documented beneath the sea. The significance of this change extends far beyond possessing unusual eyesight. Vision alone would have offered little advantage if no red light existed to detect. The stoplight loosejaw solved both challenges at once. It became both the source of the illumination and the only nearby observer capable of interpreting it. What appeared to surrounding animals as complete darkness contained a hidden beam passing unnoticed through the water, revealing details available almost exclusively to the predator that created it. This remarkable ability transformed one of nature's most dependable disguises into a dangerous illusion. Countless small animals had evolved red pigmentation because it rendered them nearly indistinguishable from the darkness surrounding them when viewed through ordinary deep-sea eyes. Their camouflage remained highly effective against almost every hunter sharing the same environment. Yet the stoplight loosejaw viewed those same creatures through an entirely different visual system. Bodies that seemed perfectly concealed to one observer became plainly distinguishable to another. The effect has often been compared to carrying a secret flashlight. The comparison captures the elegance of the adaptation without exaggeration. Imagine moving through a dark landscape while holding a lamp whose light remains invisible to everyone except yourself. The surroundings suddenly reveal details unavailable to every other traveler, yet no one realizes the landscape has been illuminated at all. The stoplight loosejaw accomplishes something remarkably similar beneath the ocean, projecting red light that escapes the notice of nearby animals while exposing exactly those creatures relying upon red camouflage for protection. Because neighboring prey cannot perceive the illumination, they receive almost no warning that they have entered the predator's field of view. Their carefully evolved disguise continues functioning perfectly against almost every other hunter, yet it fails against this single exception. The dragonfish does not overturn the rules of camouflage for the entire deep ocean. It quietly steps outside those rules, observing a version of the environment unavailable to almost everything drifting nearby. The source of this remarkable illumination lies within specialized light-producing organs known as photophores, positioned beneath the eyes. These organs generate the red glow that distinguishes certain dragonfish from nearly every neighboring predator. Like other forms of bioluminescence found throughout the deep sea, the light originates through carefully controlled biological processes. The difference lies in its color. While most deep ocean organisms produce blue light because it travels efficiently through seawater and matches the visual sensitivity of surrounding animals, these photophores emit an uncommon wavelength that remains effectively hidden from almost every unintended observer. This arrangement allows the dragonfish to combine two extraordinary abilities into a single hunting system. The eyes detect information unavailable to most creatures, while the photophores provide exactly the illumination required to reveal it. Neither adaptation reaches its full potential without the other. Together, they create an advantage shaped with remarkable precision by natural selection, allowing the predator to search the surrounding darkness using a form of light that belongs almost entirely to itself. Within the hidden economy of the deep ocean, where concealment governs nearly every encounter, the stoplight loosejaw carries its own private beam through the water, uncovering lives that continue drifting onward, never realizing they have already entered another creature's view. Remarkably, the dragonfish may not have invented this extraordinary ability entirely on its own. As researchers searched for the biological foundation behind its unusual perception, they arrived at an explanation that seems almost as unexpected as the adaptation itself. The leading theory suggests that this rare capacity to detect red light is connected to pigments ultimately derived from chlorophyll, the familiar molecule that allows plants and algae to capture energy from sunlight far above the world inhabited by the dragonfish. At first, the connection appears almost impossible to imagine. The deep ocean and the sunlit surface seem separated by immense distance and entirely different ways of life. Yet the sea remains connected through an unbroken chain of feeding relationships stretching from drifting microscopic algae to the largest predators below. Energy gathered near the surface slowly passes from one living organism to another, descending through countless meals until it reaches even the darkest habitats on Earth. Along that descending pathway travel more than calories alone. Certain chemical compounds also make the journey, preserved, altered, and transferred from one organism into the next. Marine biologists believe the stoplight loosejaw may have taken advantage of one of those compounds in a way almost no other vertebrate has managed. Rather than producing every component of its remarkable vision independently, it appears to have incorporated chemistry that first originated elsewhere within the marine food web. The proposed chain begins with microscopic algae drifting through the illuminated upper ocean. These tiny organisms contain chlorophyll, the pigment responsible for capturing sunlight during photosynthesis. Small crustaceans, known as copepods, spend much of their lives feeding upon these algae, accumulating chlorophyll-derived compounds within their own bodies. Copepods are among the most abundant animals in the ocean, forming an essential link between microscopic life and countless larger predators inhabiting deeper water. For the stoplight loosejaw, copepods represent an important source of food. According to the leading hypothesis, compounds ultimately originating from the chlorophyll consumed by those crustaceans are absorbed by the fish after feeding, rather than simply breaking down those pigments as ordinary nutrients. The dragonfish may transform them into specialized visual molecules that extend the sensitivity of its eyes into wavelengths unavailable to most neighboring animals. If this explanation proves entirely correct, The implications are extraordinary. One of the predator's greatest biological advantages would not have arisen solely through the invention of a completely new chemical pathway. Instead, evolution would have recognized an existing resource already flowing through the food chain and gradually adapted it for an entirely different purpose. A substance first evolved to gather sunlight for microscopic algae would eventually contribute to the hunting success of one of the deep ocean's most specialized predators. There is an elegant economy within that possibility. Evolution often works less like an engineer creating every component from nothing, and more like a patient craftsperson discovering unexpected uses for materials already available. Existing structures are modified. Familiar chemistry is redirected. Solutions emerge by reshaping what nature has quietly supplied over immense spans of time. The dragonfish appears to follow that same pattern, transforming borrowed ingredients into a capability almost no neighboring species can match. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this theory lies in its direction of influence. Predators are usually imagined as shaping the evolution of their prey, forcing smaller animals to develop stronger defenses or more effective camouflage. Here, the relationship may have unfolded in a far subtler way. The stoplight loose jaw's extraordinary visual advantage may ultimately depend upon chemistry first gathered by the very creatures it consumes, making its remarkable perception a gift passed upward through the food web, borrowed second-hand from the diet of its own prey, and refined into one of the most unusual sensory adaptations known beneath the sea. Taken together, these adaptations no longer resemble isolated biological curiosities. They form a single, integrated system in which every feature supports the next with remarkable precision. The dragonfish carries skin that absorbs nearly every trace of light falling upon it, transparent teeth that fade from view even when its jaws remain open, and a visual system capable of detecting a channel of illumination that most neighboring animals never experience at all. None of these characteristics stands alone. Each becomes more effective because the others already exist. The result is a predator shaped not around overwhelming force, but around information hidden from everyone else. Concealment shields its body from wandering eyes. Invisible teeth prevent the final moment of attack from betraying its position. Its unusual vision reveals prey that continue moving through darkness with complete confidence in their own camouflage. The dragonfish does not simply disappear within its surroundings. It alters the balance between what can be seen and what remains beyond perception, placing itself on the favorable side of that invisible boundary. Many predators depend upon speed after discovery. Others rely upon powerful muscles or overwhelming numbers. The dragonfish follows another path entirely. Its success begins long before movement. By the time its prey becomes aware of danger, nearly every advantage has already been decided through anatomy refined over immense spans of evolutionary history. The decisive moment arrives only after countless hidden advantages have quietly accumulated into a single opportunity. For animals relying upon red coloration as protection, this combination creates an especially difficult challenge. Their camouflage evolved because the surrounding community could not normally perceive that portion of the spectrum. Generation after generation, natural selection rewarded individuals whose bodies blended into darkness when viewed through ordinary deep ocean eyes. Yet the dragonfish does not observe the same world through the same limitations. It carries a perception that slips beyond those shared boundaries, exposing patterns that remain concealed from nearly everything nearby. No confirmed counter-adaptation is presently known that fully defeats this particular combination. a prey animal may remain nearly impossible for ordinary hunters to locate while still becoming visible to the dragonfish. It may avoid reflecting stray light because its predator's skin absorbs almost everything surrounding it. Even the final barrier, presented by transparent teeth, offers little visual warning before capture. Defenses that evolved successfully against one community of predators appear far less effective against this exceptionally specialized hunter. This imbalance illustrates an enduring pattern found throughout natural history. Whenever one species develops an unusual advantage, surrounding life gradually responds with new forms of protection, disguise, or escape. Yet those responses require time, and sometimes an innovation emerges so unexpectedly that existing defenses provide little immediate answer. The dragonfish seems to occupy one of those rare moments where several extraordinary adaptations overlap, reinforcing one another until the whole becomes far greater than the sum of its individual parts. Nothing about this arrangement appears excessive. Every feature answers a specific challenge presented by an environment where opportunities remain scarce and mistakes are rarely forgiven. Light is controlled with extraordinary precision. Vision is extended into territory unavailable to most neighbors. Even the predator itself becomes increasingly difficult to detect while carrying out the final act of hunting. Efficiency rather than extravagance defines the entire design. Even so, extraordinary perception and exceptional concealment cannot complete the hunt alone. Discovering prey matters only if it can be secured before the opportunity vanishes back into darkness. The dragonfish still requires a body capable of converting hidden advantage into successful capture, and that necessity leads naturally toward perhaps its most unusual physical structure, one that reshapes the very mechanics of how a predator closes its jaws around a meal. There comes a point where familiar anatomy no longer provides a useful guide. The dragonfish reaches that point with its jaws, transforming a structure shared by countless fishes into something that behaves according to a different set of mechanical rules. The mouth is not merely large in proportion to the body. It has been reshaped so thoroughly by evolutionary pressure that the ordinary limits imposed by bone and joint seem almost suspended. In most fishes, the upper jaw remains closely tied to the skull, allowing the mouth to open only within a range that preserves stability during feeding. The dragonfish follows another design. As the jaws begin to spread apart, a specialized connection between the skull and the upper jaw releases, permitting the entire feeding apparatus to rotate far beyond what is commonly possible. The mouth can hinge open by more than 100 degrees, creating an opening that appears astonishingly oversized for an animal of such modest dimensions. This movement is not chaotic or uncontrolled. Every ligament, muscle, and supporting bone participates in a coordinated sequence that preserves strength while dramatically expanding reach. Instead of forcing rigid structures beyond their limits, the dragonfish rearranges how those structures interact. The skull briefly adopts a different mechanical configuration, allowing the jaws to extend outward in preparation for a capture that would otherwise remain impossible. The resulting gape changes the scale of prey the animal can successfully consume. Rather than being restricted to victims close to its own dimensions, the dragonfish is capable of swallowing prey as much as 50% larger than its own body length. A meal that would appear impossibly large for many similarly sized predators can gradually disappear into its expanding mouth, carried inward through carefully synchronized movements of the jaws and throat. The event unfolds with remarkable efficiency, avoiding wasted effort at the very moment when energy is most valuable. Such an ability carries unusual importance in a realm where opportunities arrive unpredictably. Encounters with suitable prey may be separated by long intervals, leaving little room for selective feeding. Passing upon a potential meal because it exceeds ordinary limits would represent an unnecessary loss. Equally costly would be capturing prey too small to repay the energy invested in finding and seizing it. The dragonfish resolves both challenges through flexibility rather than abundance, accepting prey across a surprisingly broad range of sizes whenever fortune presents the chance. This strategy reflects the arithmetic of scarcity rather than excess. Every successful capture must provide as much value as possible before another opportunity appears. A single substantial meal may support the animal through an extended period during which nothing suitable drifts within reach. Evolution, therefore, favors anatomical arrangements that maximize each rare success instead of encouraging repeated pursuits that consume precious energy. The remarkable hinge of the dragonfish jaw becomes less an anatomical curiosity than a practical response to a world governed by infrequent reward. The design also reduces the consequences of hesitation. When prey finally approaches, there may be little opportunity to judge whether another, perhaps larger, target will soon follow. The predator benefits from the ability to seize what arrives instead of risking prolonged hunger while waiting for something more favorable. An expandable mouth transforms uncertainty into possibility, allowing the dragonfish to capitalize upon encounters that would exceed the physical limits of many other hunters. Viewed alongside its extraordinary concealment, transparent teeth, and uncommon visual abilities, this remarkable jaw completes another essential part of an integrated hunting system. Remaining unseen increases the likelihood that prey will approach. Exceptional vision reveals animals hidden from competing predators. The unusual hinge then ensures that even unexpectedly large rewards need not be abandoned. In a place where nourishment can remain absent for long stretches, a missed opportunity or a meal too small to justify the effort may carry consequences lasting far beyond a single encounter, making this extraordinary mechanism one more carefully refined answer to the demands of life in the deep. Among the many dragonfish that inhabit the deep ocean, one lineage carries an anatomical design so unusual that it seems to abandon an assumption shared by nearly every other jawed vertebrate. The stoplight loosejaw possesses a lower jaw, unlike almost anything found elsewhere in the animal kingdom. Where most mouths are supported by a solid floor of tissue and bone beneath the tongue, this remarkable predator leaves that space almost entirely open. Instead of a continuous base, the two sides are connected primarily by a single ligament, creating an architecture that appears improbably delicate until it is placed in motion. At first glance, such a structure seems incomplete, as though an essential part of the animal never developed. Yet every missing piece serves a purpose. By eliminating much of the material that would normally occupy the lower portion of the mouth, the stoplight loosejaw removes restrictions that would otherwise limit movement. The result is not weakness, but freedom, allowing the feeding apparatus to operate through a range impossible for more conventional designs. As prey drifts within striking distance, the mechanics unfold with remarkable coordination. The head itself can shift slightly from its ordinary alignment, producing a controlled, partial dislocation that momentarily changes the geometry of the entire skull. At nearly the same instant, the elongated lower jaw drives forward before snapping closed with extraordinary speed. The movement resembles a carefully prepared trap released from tension, converting stored muscular force into an almost instantaneous capture. Nothing about the sequence depends upon prolonged pursuit. Success rests upon precision measured within the smallest fractions of opportunity. The open construction beneath the jaw contributes directly to this performance. Without a rigid floor resisting expansion and forward motion, the mouth can sweep through a larger volume of surrounding water while maintaining a surprisingly streamlined profile during the approach. Every unnecessary obstacle has gradually disappeared through evolutionary refinement, leaving only those structures that actively improve the effectiveness of the strike. The resulting mechanism reflects subtraction rather than addition, demonstrating that biological innovation sometimes advances by removing material instead of accumulating it. Scale further emphasizes the extraordinary nature of this arrangement. The lower jaw alone accounts for roughly 1/4 of the fish's total body length, giving the predator a feeding apparatus that dominates its overall proportions. Such an investment of body structure would appear excessive in many environments, yet, within the deep ocean, every additional fraction of reach may determine whether a rare encounter becomes nourishment or slips away into darkness. The jaw extends the animal's effective hunting range without demanding constant swimming, preserving valuable energy between feeding opportunities. Carrying such an elongated structure also influences the balance of the entire body. Muscles, ligaments, and supporting bones must cooperate with exceptional precision to prevent instability while preserving rapid movement. Evolution has therefore shaped not only the jaw itself, but the surrounding framework that guides and restrains it. Each component contributes to a system in which flexibility and control remain inseparable, allowing dramatic motion without sacrificing reliability. The design reveals another recurring principle already woven throughout the dragonfish. Conventional expectations repeatedly give way to solutions that appear improbable until the demands of the habitat become clear. Skin absorbs nearly every trace of light. Teeth remain exceptionally difficult to perceive while retaining formidable cutting ability. Vision expands beyond the ordinary limits of neighboring animals. Now the feeding apparatus itself abandons familiar structural rules, replacing them with a mechanism optimized for rare but decisive moments. In this landscape of scarcity, excess weight, unnecessary resistance, and limited reach all carry hidden costs that accumulate over time. The stoplight loose jaw answers those pressures by reducing structure to the smallest framework capable of extraordinary performance. What remains is neither fragile nor unfinished. It is an elegant mechanical compromise, refined across immense spans of evolution until almost every visible feature contributes directly to the single purpose of transforming one fleeting opportunity into a successful meal. At first, removing part of a predator's mouth appears to contradict the basic principles of survival. Conventional intuition suggests that more structure should produce greater strength, greater control, and greater reliability. The stoplight loose jaw reveals a different truth. Within the immense pressure of deep ocean evolution, subtraction can become a more effective form of engineering than addition. What seems absent is, in reality, one of the most carefully refined features of the entire animal. Water behaves very differently from air. Every movement must push against a dense surrounding medium that continually resists acceleration. For an ambush predator, even slight increases in resistance can slow the final motion of an attack by just enough to allow prey to escape. Evolution, therefore, rewards designs that reduce unnecessary contact with the surrounding water. Every surface removed from the moving parts of the body slightly decreases the force required to drive those structures forward. The The stoplight loose jaw accomplishes this by eliminating the ordinary floor beneath its lower jaw. Instead of forcing a broad surface through the water during a strike, the predator presents a far narrower profile. As the elongated jaws accelerate, considerably less water must be displaced. The surrounding fluid offers reduced opposition, allowing the movement to unfold with greater speed and efficiency. Rather than acting like a broad paddle pressing through resistance, the jaw behaves more like a slender frame slicing through its environment with remarkably little interruption. This seemingly modest change transforms the final instant of the hunt. Ambush predators rarely receive a second opportunity once prey senses danger. The interval between discovery and escape may last only the briefest moment. Any reduction in drag becomes valuable because it allows the strike to reach its target sooner. A fraction of additional speed may determine whether the jaws close around a successful meal or snap shut upon empty water. The difference is measured not through overwhelming force, but through carefully minimized resistance. Such efficiency carries unusual importance where food remains unpredictable. A failed attack expends precious energy while yielding nothing in return. The predator must recover, reposition itself, and continue waiting for another opportunity that may not arrive for an extended period. By reducing drag wherever possible, the stoplight loosejaw increases the likelihood that each carefully prepared ambush ends with nourishment instead of continued hunger. Evolution favors even slight improvements when those improvements accumulate across countless generations. The elegance of this solution becomes even more remarkable because it demands no additional complexity. No massive new muscles appear, no heavier bones reinforce the strike. Instead, the animal succeeds by allowing the surrounding water to interfere less with its movement. The missing floor beneath the jaw becomes an invisible advantage, reducing resistance every time the predator feeds without requiring any additional effort from the rest of the body. It is an economy of design in which absence performs useful work. This pattern echoes throughout every remarkable adaptation already woven into the dragonfish. Darkness becomes protection because the skin captures incoming light. Transparency becomes concealment because the teeth avoid revealing their presence. Exceptional vision emerges by extending perception beyond ordinary limits. Now, an apparent anatomical omission becomes another specialized tool, proving once again that evolution often improves performance by redefining the problem instead of overpowering it. Seen together, these features reveal a consistent philosophy written into the dragonfish itself. Nothing exists merely because it can. Nothing remains because it resembles the bodies of other fishes. Every structure survives only if it contributes directly to the demanding arithmetic of life in the deep ocean. Even the spaces where tissue no longer exists continue serving a purpose. The floorless jaw therefore stands as more than an anatomical curiosity. It demonstrates that, within this extraordinary predator, even what has been removed functions as part of the weapon. The absence itself has become an instrument of capture, reducing resistance, increasing speed, and turning a missing body part into yet another advantage shaped by relentless natural selection. The deepest surprises often arrive not when something behaves exactly as expected, but when every visible clue points toward one conclusion while reality settles somewhere entirely different. The stoplight loosejaw appears equipped for dramatic attacks upon enormous victims. Its remarkable jaws, elongated proportions, and extraordinary feeding apparatus suggest a predator built to overpower creatures nearly as imposing as itself. Yet when researchers examined what these animals had actually been eating, the evidence revealed a far gentler pattern than their appearance seemed to promise. Stomach content studies have repeatedly shown that many stoplight loosejaws feed primarily upon tiny crustaceans known as copepods. These drifting animals are among the most abundant forms of life in the deep ocean, carried through the darkness in slow currents that connect distant layers of the sea. Compared with the astonishing dimensions of the predator's feeding mechanism, such prey seem almost surprisingly modest. A creature capable of opening its mouth with extraordinary reach often spends its energy capturing meals that could have been swallowed without such remarkable anatomical innovations. The contrast feels almost impossible to ignore. Every visible feature appears to advertise overwhelming capability. The elongated lower jaw, the unusual skeletal flexibility, and the specialized strike all suggest a hunter prepared for exceptionally large captures. Yet much of everyday feeding seems devoted to prey requiring none of those extreme adaptations. The weapon exists, but the occasions demanding its full potential appear to be uncommon. This contradiction has become one of the most fascinating unresolved pieces of the dragonfish story. Evolution rarely preserves elaborate structures without meaningful advantage. Every additional feature requires energy to grow, maintain, and carry throughout an animal's lifetime. Across countless generations, unnecessary designs usually disappear as natural selection favors greater efficiency. The persistence of such an elaborate feeding apparatus, therefore, suggests that its greatest value may emerge only under particular circumstances rather than during ordinary meals. One leading explanation considers the unpredictable rhythm of life in the deep ocean itself. Food rarely arrives with dependable regularity. Long intervals may separate meaningful feeding opportunities, while smaller organisms drift past more frequently but provide comparatively limited nourishment. Under these conditions, a predator capable of consuming tiny prey every day while remaining prepared for an exceptionally large opportunity gains an important measure of flexibility. Most days may pass with modest catches, yet a single unusually large meal could provide energy reserves that sustain survival through an extended period of scarcity. Within that possibility, the enormous jaw begins to resemble an emergency reserve rather than a tool intended for constant use. It waits for unusual moments instead of ordinary ones. During countless encounters with small drifting animals, its full capacity remains unnecessary. Then, perhaps only occasionally, an unexpectedly large fish or other substantial creature passes within striking distance. In that brief encounter, the elaborate mechanics become invaluable, allowing the predator to seize nourishment that would remain unattainable for less specialized hunters. Researchers continue exploring this idea with appropriate caution because the deep ocean rarely offers opportunities to observe these animals behaving naturally. Encounters remain uncommon, and direct observations of feeding are limited. Much of what scientists understand comes from preserved specimens and careful examination after collection rather than prolonged study within the animal's own environment. Each new observation adds another small piece to a puzzle that remains only partially assembled. Even without complete certainty, the pattern itself reflects the recurring logic already woven through this remarkable predator. Features that appear excessive under ordinary circumstances become entirely reasonable once the demanding economics of the deep sea are considered. Survival does not always reward the design used most often. Sometimes, it favors the design that proves indispensable during the single encounter, separating continued life from a long decline. The stoplight loosejaw carries precisely that possibility within its extraordinary mouth, a remarkable adaptation whose greatest purpose may reveal itself only on the rarest and most important occasions. Suspended beneath the head, almost delicate enough to escape notice, hangs another remarkable adaptation. It is neither fin nor whisker in the familiar sense, but a slender, thread-like extension known as the barbel. From a distance, it resembles an ordinary strand drifting with the surrounding water, moving with gentle currents rather than deliberate effort. At its very tip rests a specialized light-producing organ, transforming this narrow filament into something far more sophisticated than a simple ornament. Long before the dragonfish needs to chase anything, the hunt has already begun through this patient display. Unlike the sudden violence of jaws or teeth, the barbel depends upon suggestion rather than force. It presents an invitation instead of a threat. Small animals wandering through the darkness search constantly for signs of nourishment, following faint visual cues whenever an opportunity appears. The dragonfish turns that expectation into an advantage by offering an imitation of exactly the sort of object its prey hopes to discover. Rather than pursuing every passing creature, the predator allows curiosity and instinct to complete much of the distance on its behalf. The glowing tip does not shine without purpose. Its appearance can resemble tiny living organisms or drifting morsels that naturally occur within the deep sea. To a passing animal already conditioned by countless generations to investigate such signals, the imitation becomes remarkably convincing. Every slight movement of the barbel adds another layer of realism, allowing the false promise of food to blend naturally into the slow rhythm of the surrounding water. The predator remains nearly motionless while the illusion itself performs the work. Only when the distance has narrowed enough does the careful balance change. The same adaptations that concealed the dragonfish moments earlier suddenly become decisive. The nearly lightless skin offers little warning. Transparent teeth avoid revealing the waiting mouth. Extraordinary jaws remain prepared until the final instant. The lure never needs to overpower its target because its true purpose has already been fulfilled. It has persuaded another creature to abandon caution before the strike even begins. Remarkably, the barbel is not identical across every dragonfish. Different species possess their own distinctive versions, shaped through countless generations by the particular animals they most often pursue. Some barbels are comparatively long, extending farther beneath the body before ending in their glowing tip. Others remain shorter or display different proportions that alter how they drift through the surrounding water. The light itself may also vary in pattern or presentation, creating displays better suited to attracting certain forms of prey than others. This diversity suggests that the lure is more than a general beacon. It resembles a carefully refined instrument, adjusted over evolutionary time for remarkably specific purposes. A prey animal, responding readily to one pattern, may ignore another entirely. Small differences in movement, brightness, or overall form can determine whether an approaching creature continues forward or changes direction. Across immense spans of time, even slight improvements in attraction would reward the predators carrying them, gradually producing barbels increasingly matched to the feeding habits of each species. Such specialization reveals another recurring principle woven throughout the dragonfish. Few of its remarkable features exist in isolation. Every adaptation strengthens another, forming a coordinated system rather than a collection of unrelated curiosities. Concealment allows the lure to remain convincing. Exceptional vision ensures that approaching prey can be detected. Flexible jaws complete the encounter once the distance has vanished. The glowing barbel serves as the opening movement in this carefully connected sequence, inviting rather than pursuing. Within the darkness, where chance encounters are never guaranteed, patience often becomes more valuable than speed. The dragonfish allows the surrounding ocean to carry opportunity toward it, offering a carefully crafted illusion that appears entirely ordinary to the creatures meant to notice it. What seems like a fragile thread suspended beneath the chin is, in truth, another precisely engineered tool, shaped not merely to produce light, but to transform another animal's search for food into the first step toward becoming food itself. Not every act of concealment depends upon absorbing light. Sometimes the more effective solution is to produce just enough of it. Along the underside of many dragonfish lies another remarkable adaptation, one that appears almost contradictory at first glance. Instead of remaining completely dark, the belly carries rows of tiny light-producing organs known as photophores. Each is capable of releasing a gentle glow that can be adjusted to resemble the faint illumination filtering downward from the distant surface far above. Rather than making the fish easier to notice, this carefully controlled light allows it to dissolve into the background itself. Even in regions where sunlight has nearly vanished, a trace of brightness still drifts downward from the world overhead. It is extremely weak after passing through such immense depths, yet, for animals looking upward, it creates a subtle difference between open water and any solid object crossing that dim field. A predator swimming beneath another creature does not always search for color or detail. Often, it needs only to recognize a dark outline interrupting the remaining glow. Against such a backdrop, the silhouette alone is enough to reveal a target. The dragonfish answers that problem with remarkable precision. Instead of presenting a recognizable outline, its photophores emit light that closely matches the surrounding illumination. The glow is not intended to shine brighter than the water around it, nor to attract attention through sudden flashes. It serves a much narrower purpose. By producing light similar in intensity to the faint background above, the fish reduces the contrast between its own body and the water beyond. The familiar shadow that might otherwise betray its presence gradually disappears. To an animal searching upward through the deep sea, the effect can be extraordinarily effective. Where a distinct shape should drift across the remaining glow, almost nothing separates predator from background. The dragonfish becomes less like an object moving through open water and more like another part of the water itself. The boundary between living body and surrounding darkness softens until recognition becomes far more difficult. An opportunity to detect danger fades before it fully forms. This strategy demonstrates that concealment in the deep ocean is not achieved through a single remarkable feature, but through many adaptations working together across different situations. One challenge demands the absorption of nearly every stray beam touching the skin. Another requires transparent teeth that avoid reflecting even the smallest glimmer. Yet another calls for carefully controlled light released from the body itself. Each solution addresses a different pathway through which another animal might discover the predator's presence. None replaces the others. Together, they create a far more complete form of disappearance than any individual adaptation could accomplish alone. Seen together, these features reveal an extraordinary pattern of evolutionary refinement. The skin removes unwanted reflections before they begin. The transparent teeth prevent the waiting mouth from announcing itself during an ambush. Now, the glowing organs beneath the body erase the outline that would otherwise remain visible to creatures approaching from below. Every major surface capable of revealing the fish has been altered with remarkable precision. Even light itself has become another material to shape, rather than merely endure. The result resembles an animal engaged in a continuous conversation with its surroundings, adjusting each visible surface until distinction becomes increasingly difficult. It does not rely upon speed to escape notice, nor upon overwhelming size to discourage pursuit. Instead, it reduces the chances of being recognized in the first place, allowing countless encounters to pass without ever becoming true encounters at all. By this point in its story, concealment has appeared in three distinct forms, each unlike the last, yet guided by the same purpose. Light disappears into specialized skin. Sharp teeth vanish through extraordinary transparency. Even the remaining outline dissolves beneath carefully controlled illumination. In the dragonfish, invisibility is not the product of a single remarkable adaptation, but the combined expression of many, each refining another until the surrounding ocean becomes the most effective disguise of all. There comes a point when even the most remarkable collection of adaptations begins to feel complete. A body wrapped in light-absorbing skin, armed with transparent teeth, guided by a private channel of vision, equipped with extraordinary jaws, supported by an intricate lure, and concealed beneath carefully controlled illumination, seems to represent the fullest expression of deep-sea predation. Piece by piece, each feature has revealed another solution to the same unforgiving problem, surviving where food is scarce and discovery by others can end a life as quickly as hunger itself. Yet the dragonfish has been carrying another story all along, one that unfolds beyond the hunt and reaches into the continuation of its own lineage. The struggle to remain alive is only part of existence within the deep ocean. Every successful predator must also solve a second challenge that can be equally demanding. Finding food is difficult enough where animals may drift for immense distances without meeting another living creature. Finding a suitable mate within that same vastness introduces an entirely different set of obstacles. Evolution has shaped not only the dragonfish's remarkable hunting equipment, but also the biological strategies through which future generations continue to appear in a world defined by extraordinary separation. Until now, nearly every adaptation has served the same broad purpose. Skin-reduced reflections, teeth disappeared from view, specialized vision uncovered hidden prey, flexible jaws expanded feeding opportunities. A carefully crafted lure invited victims closer, while glowing organs beneath the body softened the outline visible from below. Every refinement pointed toward the act of capturing another meal. Together they formed an interconnected system of concealment, perception, and sudden action, each strengthening the effectiveness of the others. The next chapter follows a very different path. Instead of asking how a predator finds food, it asks how such an animal finds another member of its own species in an environment so immense that chance alone often seems insufficient. The answers developed by deep-sea creatures frequently appear every bit as inventive as the anatomical structures that support survival. Sometimes they become even more extraordinary, because reproduction allows far fewer opportunities for failure. A missed meal can often be replaced by another. A missed opportunity to reproduce may never return. Among the many inhabitants of the deep ocean, reproduction has inspired some of the most unusual biological solutions known anywhere on Earth. Vast distances separate individuals. Encounters may occur only rarely. Environmental conditions remain demanding throughout every stage of life. Under such circumstances, familiar strategies observed in shallower waters do not always provide dependable success. Evolution, instead, explores possibilities that might appear astonishing when viewed through the expectations formed in more accessible environments. The dragonfish belongs to that remarkable tradition of unexpected solutions. Its reproductive biology does not simply accompany the hunting adaptations already explored. In many respects, it stands beside them as an equally striking demonstration of what prolonged evolution can accomplish when ordinary approaches no longer satisfy extraordinary conditions. The same relentless pressures that refined invisible teeth and specialized vision also acted upon courtship, mating, and the continuation of future generations, gradually producing outcomes that seem almost impossible until examined carefully. The deeper this story travels, the more consistently one pattern continues to emerge. Every apparent limit becomes another opportunity for innovation. Scarcity encourages efficiency. Darkness reshapes vision. Distance transforms communication. Isolation alters reproduction. Rather than resisting these pressures, the dragonfish reflects them with remarkable precision, its entire existence becoming a living record of adaptation carried to extraordinary lengths. What comes next belongs to that second story. It unfolds beyond jaws and teeth, beyond concealment and ambush, revealing biological strategies that stand among the most unusual yet documented in the deep ocean. Measured against everything already encountered, these discoveries may prove even more unexpected, showing that the dragonfish reserved some of its most remarkable adaptations for the simple necessity of ensuring that another generation would one day inherit the same extraordinary world. At first glance, the name dragonfish suggests a single familiar form carried across every member of the group. The image that has gradually emerged has been remarkably consistent, a predator refined for concealment, precision, and patient opportunity. Yet, this impression begins to dissolve when reproduction enters the story. In several species, the differences between the two sexes become so profound that they scarcely resemble members of the same lineage. Side by side, they appear less like partners and more like entirely separate creatures that happen to inherit the same name. The female embodies nearly everything already encountered throughout this journey. She reaches the larger size, carrying the long, slender body shaped for movement through the deep sea. Her mouth bears the transparent fangs that vanish against the surrounding darkness. Beneath her body, light-producing organs contribute to careful concealment, while another luminous organ hangs from the chin upon a delicate barbel that serves as an intricate hunting device. Every structure reflects the demanding work of locating prey, capturing it, and surviving through extended periods when nourishment may remain difficult to obtain. Her body represents a complete collection of specialized equipment assembled over countless generations. Each adaptation strengthens another. Vision complements concealment. Concealment supports ambush. Flexible jaws expand feeding opportunities. The luminous barbel encourages curious prey to approach within striking distance. Nothing appears unnecessary because every feature contributes to the challenge of enduring an environment where efficiency determines survival. She carries the familiar appearance that has defined the dragonfish throughout the story so far, an animal equipped for remarkable independence within one of Earth's least forgiving habitats. The male follows an astonishingly different path. Instead of growing into a similarly armed predator, he remains dramatically smaller, with a body that lacks many of the defining characteristics associated with the dragonfish. His coloration often appears dark brown rather than the deeper appearance displayed by the female. The formidable, transparent teeth are absent. The luminous barbel never develops. Many of the elaborate hunting adaptations that seemed inseparable from the identity of a dragonfish simply do not appear within his anatomy. The differences continue beneath the surface. In several species, the male possesses no functioning digestive system once adulthood is reached. The organs normally responsible for processing food become greatly reduced or cease serving their familiar purpose altogether. Rather than continuing life through active feeding, he survives using energy accumulated during earlier stages of development. His future becomes tied to a biological strategy fundamentally different from that followed by the female, one in which locating food gradually yields importance to locating a mate. This remarkable contrast reveals how thoroughly evolution can reshape members of the same species when their roles diverge. The female continues solving the relentless demands of predation, carrying every adaptation required for finding nourishment across a vast and sparsely populated ocean. The male instead sheds many of those costly structures because his greatest challenge is no longer the pursuit of prey. Resources that might otherwise support elaborate hunting equipment become directed toward an entirely different purpose. Such extraordinary sexual dimorphism reminds us that evolution does not seek symmetry or familiarity. It favors whatever arrangement allows genes to continue into another generation. If separate solutions provide greater success for males and females, their appearances may gradually drift farther apart until outward resemblance becomes surprisingly limited. What remains unchanged is not the form itself, but the shared ancestry that still links these dramatically different bodies beneath their contrasting designs. The dragonfish, therefore, becomes two distinct stories, unfolding within the same species. One body is built for patience, concealment, and relentless predation. The other is stripped to essentials, carrying only those features necessary for a different chapter of survival. Together, they reveal that even after the remarkable hunting adaptations already explored, the deep ocean still reshapes life in ways that continue to stretch ordinary expectations. Not every life in the deep ocean unfolds through hunting. After following the remarkable machinery that allows the female dragonfish to locate prey, remain concealed, and survive where food is scarce, another path gradually emerges beside it. The male travels through the same darkness, with a purpose that is strikingly different. His body carries far fewer of the elaborate tools that define the female, because his future depends upon completing one task alone. Everything else has gradually become secondary. For several species, adulthood marks the beginning of an extraordinary race against limitation. The male must locate a female before the energy stored within his body is exhausted. In some species, he cannot replace that energy through feeding because his digestive system no longer functions in any meaningful way. The ability to consume prey, so essential to nearly every other fish in the ocean, has faded into irrelevance. His survival becomes inseparable from reproduction itself. Every movement spends a resource that can never be replenished. Such a life leaves little room for unnecessary structures. Large hunting jaws provide no advantage. Transparent fangs become unnecessary. The luminous barbel disappears. Many of the specialized features that transformed the female into an accomplished predator never develop because they no longer contribute to the single challenge that determines the male's future. Evolution has not weakened him. It has redirected nearly every available resource toward improving the likelihood of encountering another member of his own species before time quietly slips away, leaving only the surrounding darkness unchanged. One adaptation stands above the rest. Compared with the female, the male possesses proportionally larger eyes equipped with denser light-sensitive cells. These refined visual tissues gather the smallest traces of available illumination that drift through the surrounding water. Every additional particle of light becomes valuable, because a distant glow may reveal the presence of a female whose own luminous organs briefly interrupt the endless darkness. Where another animal might perceive only emptiness, the male gains a slightly greater chance of recognizing the faintest indication that another life exists somewhere beyond immediate reach. The improvement is subtle rather than miraculous. The ocean does not suddenly become bright, nor does distance lose its meaning. Instead, the visual system stretches its limits just enough to increase the possibility of success across an immense landscape where individuals remain separated by extraordinary expanses of water. Countless searches still end without reward, yet even the smallest increase in detection range offers an evolutionary advantage when encounters are so exceedingly uncommon. This journey differs profoundly from the patient search for prey undertaken by the female. She explores the water column, seeking nourishment that may appear unpredictably from any direction. The male searches for only one kind of destination. Every instinct, every movement, and every remaining reserve of energy become focused upon finding another dragonfish. The immense surroundings no longer represent feeding territory. They become a vast space through which a single possibility may eventually appear. There is an unusual simplicity within this design. An entire existence, however brief, narrows toward one meeting in a world where almost nothing can be seen. The ocean offers no landmarks, no familiar pathways, and almost no certainty. Yet natural selection has continued refining this remarkable strategy because, across immense stretches of evolutionary time, enough males succeeded in finding females to pass these traits forward into another generation. The contrast completes a portrait unlike almost any other among deep-sea animals. One dragonfish survives by mastering concealment, ambush, and remarkable anatomical innovation. The other survives only long enough to locate the partner upon whom every future generation depends. Together they reveal that life in the deepest waters does not follow a single pattern. Even within the same species, evolution can shape entirely different destinies, each perfectly matched to the role it must fulfill before the darkness closes once more around the empty water. Long before the dragonfish acquires its remarkable arsenal of concealment, specialized vision, and extraordinary jaws, it begins life as something almost impossible to recognize. Nothing about its earliest form hints at the formidable hunter it will eventually become. Suspended within the upper ocean, it drifts through a world filled with daylight rather than darkness, carrying a body so delicate and transparent that it seems more like a fragile thread than the beginning of one of the deep sea's most specialized predators. The newly hatched larva is slender from end to end, its tissues allowing light to pass through with remarkable ease. Internal structures remain faintly visible beneath nearly transparent skin, reducing the outline that might otherwise draw unwanted attention from the countless predators sharing the surface waters. At this stage, there are no luminous organs scattered across the body. The intricate light-producing structures that later define the adult have not yet appeared. There is no glowing barbel beneath the chin, no carefully arranged pattern of illumination, and none of the sophisticated adaptations that eventually shape life in the deep ocean. Instead, another feature immediately captures attention. Extending from either side of the head are remarkably long cartilaginous eye stalks that project the eyes outward from the body. These unusual supports transform the silhouette of the tiny larva into something unlike almost any familiar fish. In certain species, the eye stalks become so elongated that they may reach nearly half the total length of the entire body. For an animal still measuring only a very small size, the proportion appears extraordinary. as though vision has temporarily become more important than almost every other aspect of its anatomy. These elongated supports provide a practical advantage during this brief chapter of life. By separating the eyes farther apart and lifting them beyond the narrow profile of the body, the larva gains a broader view of the surrounding water. Near the surface, where countless drifting organisms, potential predators, and suspended particles move through constantly changing currents, every additional opportunity to detect movement improves the likelihood of surviving another day. The arrangement appears unusual, yet it reflects the same evolutionary pattern already encountered throughout this story. Structures that seem almost impossible at first glance often reveal careful solutions to highly specific problems. The environment surrounding the larva could scarcely differ more from the world awaiting adulthood. Rather than inhabiting immense depths, these young dragonfish remain close to the sunlit surface, where daylight filters freely through the water and microscopic life flourishes in extraordinary abundance. Here, food is comparatively plentiful, temperatures remain more moderate, and the surrounding ocean bears little resemblance to the immense darkness that will eventually become home. The journey from this illuminated nursery to the deep sea unfolds gradually as development continues and the young fish descends into progressively deeper waters. During that transformation, the body begins an astonishing reconstruction. The transparent tissues that once blended into bright surface waters gradually give way to darker pigmentation suited for life below. The elongated eye stalks are eventually lost as the head assumes its adult proportions. Light-producing organs emerge where none existed before. Hunting structures develop piece by piece until the familiar dragonfish finally appears, carrying almost no visible trace of its youthful form. The contrast is so complete that the larva and the adult seem connected only by hidden continuity rather than outward appearance. One drifts beneath open skies, illuminated by the distant sun. The other will spend its life beneath layers of water so vast that daylight can never follow. Between those two stages lies one of the most remarkable transformations in the ocean, a reminder that even the most specialized creatures often begin as something astonishingly different from the forms they are destined to become. The remarkable eye stalks carried by the young dragonfish have long invited careful study because they appear so unlike anything found in the adult. Although every detail of their function remains an active subject of research, the leading explanation is rooted in the difficult circumstances of early life near the surface. At this stage, the larva possesses almost none of the extraordinary protections that will later define its existence. It has no specialized photophores, no elaborate hunting structures, and no sophisticated means of concealment beyond its transparent body. In a realm filled with daylight and countless watchful predators, the ability to notice danger before danger notices you may provide the greatest advantage of all. By extending the eyes outward upon slender cartilaginous supports, the larva appears to broaden its view of the surrounding water without greatly increasing the size of the body itself. A wider field of vision allows movement to be detected across a greater portion of the open sea, offering precious moments in which changing currents or sudden approaches can be recognized. Such an adaptation cannot guarantee survival, yet in an environment where threats arrive from nearly every direction, even a modest improvement in awareness may determine which larvae continue growing and which disappear before reaching maturity. This arrangement reflects the demands of an entirely different world from the one awaiting adulthood. Near the surface, sunlight pours through the water and reveals shapes that would vanish completely in the deep sea. Small drifting predators, larger fish, and countless other hunters search these illuminated waters for vulnerable prey. Transparency reduces the outline of the young dragonfish, but transparency alone cannot solve every challenge. Vision becomes an equally valuable companion, helping compensate for a body that has not yet acquired the remarkable collection of adaptations assembled later in life. The transformation that follows unfolds gradually through several distinct developmental stages. Each stage replaces one solution with another as the surrounding environment changes. The elongated eye stalks eventually disappear. The transparent body begins losing the appearance that once blended so effectively with bright surface waters. Pigments accumulate, new tissues emerge. Light-producing organs develop where none previously existed. The familiar barbel takes shape beneath the chin, while the specialized structures responsible for concealment, hunting, and communication slowly become part of the growing fish. Each change reflects not randomness, but careful adjustment to an entirely new way of living. As the dragonfish descends farther into the ocean, the problems it must solve change just as dramatically. Broad vision beneath the sunlight yields importance to specialized perception within darkness. Transparency gives way to surfaces that absorb nearly every trace of incoming light. Simple survival gradually evolves into patient predation. The body that once depended primarily upon avoiding detection becomes equipped to remain hidden while searching for other animals. Every stage prepares the next, forming a continuous sequence rather than a collection of unrelated transformations. The contrast between beginning and ending is among the most remarkable found anywhere in the ocean. The same individual that first drifted through open water with little beyond transparent tissues and elongated eye stalks eventually becomes a predator wrapped in extraordinary concealment. Light itself becomes a tool rather than an obstacle. The surrounding darkness changes from a danger into an ally. Structures that seemed unimaginable during the earliest days of life gradually emerge until the adult bears almost no outward resemblance to the fragile larva from which it developed. Seen together, these stages reveal a complete story of adaptation rather than a single astonishing creature. Life begins with vulnerability, broad vision, and exposure beneath the illuminated surface. It concludes with mastery of concealment in waters where sunlight never reaches. Between those distant chapters lies one of nature's most extraordinary transformations, carrying the same animal from near helplessness into the ranks of the most effectively concealed predators known on Earth. No single feature can explain the dragonfish. Only when they are gathered together does the pattern begin to emerge. Skin that swallows nearly every trace of incoming light. Teeth so transparent they seem to vanish even when another creature glows nearby. Eyes capable of perceiving a hidden band of illumination that slips unnoticed through the surrounding darkness. A lower jaw reshaped until familiar anatomical limits no longer apply. A slender barbel suspended beneath the chin, carrying a living point of light crafted to imitate exactly what another animal hopes to find. Each adaptation appears extraordinary on its own. Together they form something remarkably coherent. It is tempting to imagine such traits as separate marvels, assembled one after another through fortunate coincidence. The deeper story is far simpler. Every feature belongs to the same problem, and every solution points toward the same destination. None exists in isolation. The black skin supports the hidden approach. The transparent teeth preserve that concealment through the instant of attack. The unusual visual system reveals prey that other hunters cannot detect. The flexible jaws prepare for opportunities too valuable to lose. The luminous lure shortens the final distance between predator and victim. Every structure reinforces the next, until the entire animal behaves less like a collection of organs and more like a single, carefully coordinated instrument. The force shaping all of this is not mystery, it is hunger. Far below the productive waters near the surface, food becomes astonishingly uncommon. Most organic material drifting downward has already been consumed many times before it reaches these depths. Small fragments, scattered carcasses, and infrequent living prey must support entire communities spread through an immense volume of water. Encounters become uncertain. Days may pass without success. In such a place, every unsuccessful pursuit carries a cost that cannot easily be recovered. A predator that wastes energy chasing prey it cannot catch gradually disappears from the population. Another that reveals itself too early loses precious opportunities. One that settles for meals too small may survive today while lacking enough stored energy to endure the long interval before tomorrow's chance arrives. Generation after generation, natural selection presses against every weakness with relentless consistency. Tiny improvements accumulate because each one offers another possibility of enduring a little longer than competitors facing the same scarcity. Seen through that lens, the dragonfish begins to lose its appearance of impossibility. The vanishing skin is no extravagance. The invisible teeth are not decorative curiosities. The hidden channel of vision is not an unnecessary luxury. The unusual jaws are not anatomical excess. Even the glowing lure, delicate as it appears, represents another careful reduction of uncertainty in an environment where certainty barely exists. Every adaptation serves the same enduring calculation. Spend as little energy as possible. Reveal as little of yourself as possible. Miss as few opportunities as possible. The remarkable truth is that none of these traits needed to become perfect in a single moment. Each only needed to improve the odds, however slightly, over countless generations, a fraction more concealment, a fraction greater precision, a fraction less wasted movement. Across immense spans of evolutionary time, those small advantages accumulated until they produced an animal whose body seems almost entirely devoted to solving one relentless equation. Strip away the unfamiliar appearance, the gleaming fangs, the unusual skeleton, and the strange lights carried into perpetual darkness, and a surprisingly simple design remains. Every feature, no matter how astonishing it first appears, traces back to the same ancient pressure. In the deep sea, where nourishment is rare and every opportunity may be the last for a very long while, hunger has become the architect of the entire body. Long before cameras descended into the deepest waters, knowledge of the hidden ocean arrived only in fragments carried upward by heavy nets. During the 19th century, deep-sea trawling expeditions gradually reached depths that earlier generations had scarcely imagined exploring. Each haul lifted pieces of an unseen realm toward the daylight, revealing animals that had spent countless ages beyond ordinary human observation. The surface world possessed forests, deserts, mountains, and familiar seas, yet almost nothing had prepared naturalists for the forms emerging from those distant depths. Many of the creatures looked unlike any fish already preserved within museums or described in scientific books. Bodies appeared darker than polished stone. Enormous mouths stretched across slender heads. Needle-shaped teeth projected in every direction with no obvious regard for graceful symmetry. Some specimens carried strange filaments beneath the chin, while others displayed tiny light-producing organs arranged across their bodies with remarkable precision. Even after the journey upward had altered their appearance through changes in pressure and delicate tissues, they retained an unmistakable sense of unfamiliarity. Those early encounters unfolded at a time when the deep ocean remained largely invisible. No observer could descend beside these animals and watch them swimming through their natural surroundings. There were no moving images revealing their posture, their hunting methods, or the faint flashes of living light surrounding them. What rested upon the deck of a research vessel often represented the first and only glimpse anyone would have of an entire species. Naturalists had to reconstruct an unseen existence from a single fragile specimen lying before them. Language itself became part of the challenge. Scientific classification could organize anatomy, compare skeletal structures, and identify relationships among species, but classification alone could not capture the impression these discoveries created. The familiar vocabulary developed from animals living on land and in shallow coastal waters seemed strangely inadequate. Words shaped by ordinary experience struggled to describe bodies that appeared almost detached from the expectations of the natural world already known. It was therefore unsurprising that mythology found its way into scientific names and common language alike. Across many cultures, dragons had long represented creatures existing beyond ordinary experience, combining formidable jaws, powerful forms, and an almost supernatural presence. They belonged to stories because nothing resembling them seemed to exist in everyday life. Faced with fish bearing impossible-looking teeth, dark bodies, and their own living sources of light, naturalists reached toward those ancient images. Myth provided a bridge where direct comparison failed. The choice reflected imagination meeting observation rather than fantasy replacing science. The people assigning these names did not believe they had discovered legendary beasts hidden beneath the sea. Instead, they borrowed the strongest image already available to communicate how astonishing these animals appeared. Biology described the anatomy. Mythology supplied the emotional shorthand. Together, they created names capable of carrying both scientific identity and the sense of encountering something profoundly unfamiliar. With time, research gradually replaced wonder born from uncertainty with understanding built through careful observation. The glowing organs acquired explanations rooted in evolution. Extraordinary jaws revealed mechanical advantages shaped by survival. Transparent teeth, specialized skin, remarkable vision, and elaborate reproductive strategies each found their place within a coherent biological story. Yet, the original name endured because it continued expressing something genuine about the first encounter between humanity and these inhabitants of the deep. Even today, after decades of exploration have transformed knowledge of the abyss, the word still carries an echo of those earliest moments aboard rolling ships when dripping nets, surrendered animals unlike anything previously catalogued. The dragonfish never required mythical origins to earn its title. Its own history proved remarkable enough. The name survives as a reminder that there are moments in science when discovery advances so far beyond familiar experience that the oldest stories become the nearest language available, allowing imagination to stand beside careful observation until understanding finally catches up. Far beneath the changing histories of continents and coastlines, the dragonfish has continued its existence with remarkable consistency. While forests spread and vanished, mountains rose and slowly wore away, and entire groups of animals appeared before fading into extinction. These deep-dwelling hunters persisted in an environment where the rules remained strikingly stable. Their story is measured not by fleeting moments of history, but by immense stretches of geological time, during which countless transformations reshaped the surface of the planet without greatly altering the darkness below. The world above has always been restless. Oceans opened and closed as drifting continents rearranged themselves. Ice advanced across vast regions before retreating once more. Shorelines shifted, climates oscillated, and familiar landscapes emerged only to disappear again. Each transformation demanded new adaptations from the creatures living beneath the open sky. Species unable to change often vanished, replaced by descendants better suited to the next chapter of Earth's unfolding history. The deep ocean followed a gentler rhythm. Conditions there certainly changed across immense spans of time, yet the abyss remained insulated from many of the rapid upheavals affecting the surface. Sunlight never reached those depths. Seasonal cycles faded into near irrelevance. Storms that churned the upper ocean dissolved into distant movements long before reaching the world inhabited by dragonfish. Within that enduring environment, an anatomy refined through evolution continued serving its purpose with extraordinary effectiveness. This enduring success explains why the dragonfish appears so unlike the animals familiar to everyday experience. It does not resemble an unfinished experiment or an outdated survivor lingering beyond its proper age. Instead, it reflects a design repeatedly tested under remarkably consistent conditions. Every transparent tooth, every carefully positioned light-producing organ, every specialized jaw, and every adaptation shaped across this documentary belongs to a body that has remained exceptionally well suited to the demanding conditions surrounding it. The passage of time has therefore left an unusual signature upon these fish. Rather than producing dramatic outward transformation with every passing era, evolution preserved many successful solutions while refining smaller details from one lineage to another. The result is an animal carrying echoes of an ancient world without existing outside the present. It belongs fully to today's oceans, even as its ancestry stretches backward across intervals almost impossible to picture within the span of a human lifetime. Perhaps even more remarkable than its age is how little of its homeland has actually been explored. Modern science has mapped mountains, deserts, forests, and polar landscapes with astonishing precision. Spacecraft have photographed distant worlds, circled planets, and produced detailed charts of places no person has ever visited. Yet the vast sea floor beneath Earth's own oceans remains only partially understood, with enormous regions still awaiting careful examination and direct observation. It is often observed that humanity possesses more complete maps of the surface of the moon than of the deep ocean floor where the dragonfish spends its life. That comparison does not diminish the achievements of space exploration. Instead, it reveals how much of our own planet continues to resist complete understanding. The nearest great frontier has never existed across empty space alone. Much of it has rested beneath familiar waves, concealed beneath immense pressure and darkness throughout the entire history of civilization. Within that hidden landscape, dragonfish continue their patient existence much as they have for ages beyond ordinary imagination. They hunt, mature, reproduce, and disappear into generations that unfold almost entirely beyond human sight. Their world remains largely their own, visited only briefly by instruments and expeditions before returning once again to uninterrupted obscurity. The dragonfish stands not merely as a survivor from deep time, but as a reminder that some of Earth's oldest stories are still unfolding in places that remain only lightly touched by human knowledge. At the beginning of this journey, the dragonfish seemed almost impossible to reconcile with the familiar living world. Transparent teeth that vanish into darkness, skin that absorbs nearly every trace of incoming light, jaws capable of extraordinary motion, luminous organs serving different purposes across the body. young that bear almost no resemblance to the adults they become, and lives shaped by conditions so unlike those at the surface that ordinary expectations begin to lose their meaning. Piece by piece, the animal appeared to gather characteristics that, taken together, seemed too unusual to belong within a single species. Yet each new discovery quietly altered that first impression. The apparent impossibilities gradually revealed themselves as practical solutions. Nothing existed for spectacle. Nothing developed without consequence. Every feature answered a specific challenge imposed by an environment where energy remained scarce. Visibility could determine survival within an instant, and opportunities arrived so infrequently that failure carried a lasting cost. What first resembled excess gradually resolved into precision. The dragonfish, therefore, does not stand apart from biology. It stands as one of biology's clearest demonstrations of consistency. Evolution does not pursue familiarity, elegance, or symmetry according to human expectations. It preserves what succeeds. Across immense spans of time, useful structures remain while ineffective ones disappear. The result can appear astonishing only because the problems being solved are so distant from the conditions surrounding everyday life at the surface. A transparent tooth becomes understandable when reflected light reveals a waiting predator. A body darker than almost any other known vertebrate becomes sensible when remaining unseen determines whether the next meal ever arrives. Light itself transforms from something that exposes into something that conceals. Enormous jaws cease appearing excessive when weeks or even longer may separate meaningful feeding opportunities. Even the striking differences between males and females become understandable once reproduction is viewed through the demands imposed by the abyss rather than by familiar patterns found elsewhere. None of these adaptations appeared in isolation. Together they form an interconnected design shaped by countless generations responding to the same enduring pressures. Remove any one element and the balance begins to change. Alter the darkness, increase the abundance of food, soften the competition, or fill the water with dependable sunlight, and many of these extraordinary characteristics would no longer offer the same advantage. Their apparent strangeness exists only because the environment demanding them remains equally extraordinary. The dragonfish reminds us that nature never promised to remain recognizable from one habitat to another. Life does not carry a preferred shape waiting to be expressed wherever conditions allow. Instead, every landscape, every climate, and every hidden corner of the planet writes its own requirements. Organisms answer those requirements through gradual change, preserving only what continues working across generation after generation. The deeper the contrast between environments, the greater the contrast between the solutions produced by evolution. In that sense, the dragonfish is neither an exception nor an error. It is exactly what its world required. The immense pressure, perpetual darkness, scattered prey, and vast distances separating one opportunity from the next did not force biology to abandon its principles. They revealed those principles with unusual clarity. Adaptation continued, following the same patient process that shaped forests, coral reefs, grasslands, deserts, and every other living system across Earth. Only the answers became unfamiliar because the questions asked by the deep ocean were unlike almost any found elsewhere. Given enough darkness, enough pressure, and enough scarcity, life does not break the rules of biology. It follows them with unwavering persistence until only the most effective possibilities remain. From the surface, those possibilities can appear almost unimaginable. Far below, where sunlight has never reached, and the oldest rhythms of the abyss continue without interruption, they are simply the forms that endured.